This is Road Noise, episode number 8. In this episode, I'm going to talk about how I believe my little 2.5-year-old girl is going to grow up to be an artist just like her dad. I'm going to talk about being ambitious and why you should be ambitious, but you want to kind of be careful about it. Something that I started messing around with this week, and I had to learn a valuable lesson about it. And also, we're going to end it up, did you know that Santa Claus taught me how to broadcast? That's all coming up in episode number 8 of Road Noise, Life 1 Mile at a Time. Thanks for riding along with me once again on Road Noise, Life 1 Mile at a Time. You're in the passenger seat, I'm in the driver's seat, and I'm going to talk to you for a while about what's been on my mind lately. If you want to know what those sounds, those grumbles, and those roars are under my voice, well, that's the noise of the road as I am traveling with you on a road trip. Right now, I'm not actually going anywhere to work. In the last episode, I talked about how just crazy busy I've been, and then it turned out I wasn't able to book anybody this week. That's okay. I'm not worried about it. My wife started full-time this week on her new job, and so we're going to have her income, and I'm actually kind of enjoying this week as a little bit of a breather before the insanity starts right before Christmas, and it is going to start. I've already had phone calls from people telling me what to expect, and so I think I'm going to be on the road quite a lot in the next coming week. So I'm enjoying this little breather. But I did need to record one of these episodes, and so I decided to go ahead and plug in and record it while I'm on the way between my house and my mom's house. It's about an hour. I might have to drive around for a little bit longer if I'm not done talking by the time I get to her house, because by the time I stopped and got gas and dropped some stuff off at a donation center and did some things before I could have a minute to plug in my microphone and get started on this podcast, I really got down the road a little bit, but that's okay. We'll keep driving until I'm done talking, and then I'll go on to my mom's house. What I'm doing is picking up the second nutcracker that I talked about in episode 6. My sister and I built those life-size nutcrackers. Well, they've been sitting at my mom's house, and they're so big I can only take one at a time, but I did figure out how to manage to put them in my Buick in the back if I roll down all the seats and get the head all the way up into the front compartment, right basically where you are right now, and drive along very carefully like that. I can get them back to Elberton, to the theater where they need to go. So I'm trying to finish that up today, trying to figure out what we're going to do as well to get a truck or a flatbed or some sort of trailer for the Christmas parade that we're going to have those nutcrackers in, and the cast of our Christmas musical, A Prelude to Christmas. It's just a whole lot of stuff on my mind right now, but I wanted to get a podcast in, and so that's what I'm doing. And I did come up with some things that I think are kind of neat. As I said in the introduction, I want to talk first about how I think my 2.5-year-old might have that artist bug in her. My son is very theatrical, and he actually could draw if he put his mind to it, but he's just not really that interested in it. He's more into the video games and stuff like that all 11-year-old boys are into. So it may turn out that he, later on in life, much like me, gets involved with drawing. But when I was his age and very young, I wanted to draw all the time. I got in trouble at school more for talking and drawing than anything else, and I went through paper like a madman. My mom would get so frustrated at me because she was constantly refilling my notebook paper because I would draw on it. And then once I realized I could go to the library and get a little packet of typing paper that was just all white, that didn't have the college ruled lines on it, that was, I could pay 25 cents and get that, and I would go a couple of times a week and get packs of that, and I would draw on typing paper. And so I did that all through school. And then there was a time where I forgot about it and didn't get really interested in it. And then halfway through high school, I drew a little something while I was bored one day and realized, hey, I could do that. And it reawakened that love for art for me, and I went to it. So maybe that'll happen for him. But right now, Merida she loves to draw. She loves to get a pencil or a pen in her hand and draw. Half of the time it's on herself. I hope she's not going to become a tattoo artist. But she really enjoys to draw, and she loves to create stuff. And lately, she's been having a hard time going to bed. She hasn't wanted to go to sleep. If you've got a 2.5-year-old or been around one, a toddler from a long range of age spectrums, sometimes they don't want to go to bed, and they'll fight you tooth and nail, and they'll kick and they'll scream, and they'll just really rebel against going to bed. And we've had a really hard time with her with that. But suddenly, I have realized by trial and error, trying to find things on the iPad to watch to help soothe her. And by the way, to jump in, interrupt myself on that, I'm not a big fan of having screens on for your kids before bedtime. I think you need an hour to an hour and a half without any sort of video screen or anything like that, so their mind can shut down. But right now it seems that it's the only thing that I can do to get her calm, and she sleeps through the night. And what I've began to do is find art instruction videos on YouTube, and she loves them, especially the ones that show artists drawing and painting her favorite Disney characters. She loves to watch the fast motion, sped up motion drawing of Elsa and Anna and Sven and Olaf, all the characters from Frozen. She also loves Beauty and the Beast and The Little Mermaid and all of those things that a little girl her age would love. She gets to watch artists render them, and some of these things are not, they're not just cartoons. There are a few of them that are cartoons, but some of them are really nice, intricate, detailed works of art. And they'll do the fast motion so you can see them from start to finish in a quick period of time. And she'll go, I want to see that one, or I want to see that one, I want to see that one. And we'll do that until she starts to wind down. And another thing that I found, and I hate that it doesn't just cycle. I need to go ahead and just get the videos, and maybe get them downloaded to my iPad, because I don't really want her having to stare at a TV across the room. Twitch.com had a feature on a couple of weeks ago that played Bob Ross, The Joy of Painting, from episode 1 all the way through 400 plus episodes of that show. And that was phenomenal, both for me and for her. It started out for me because Bob Ross is really one of the programs and one of the techniques that I used to catapult myself into being a professional artist. I was practicing the wet-on-wet technique that Bob Ross teaches, using him as an instructor when I got my first job as an etcher. And it was because of the landscapes that I had painted using Bob Ross's style that I got the job. The lady who was hiring me told me, she said, people bring in comic book stuff all the time in their portfolio, and I never see the stuff that we do, which is landscapes and portraiture and stuff like that. And I brought some of that stuff, and a lot of landscapes and a couple of portraitures, and that got me the job. So I really attribute Bob Ross as being one of the reasons that I became a professional artist. So when Twitch.com started showing Bob Ross from the first episode to the last, over 400 episodes of The Joy of Painting, a different painting every episode, took 30 minutes to make one. And yeah, as a professional artist, and I've done hundreds and hundreds of scenes and portraits and different things over the last 10 years, my technique and my style has grown to the point that when I watch Bob Ross, I can see more of the simplicity of it than I used to be able to. But whereas a lot of artists don't respect Bob Ross as a real artist because he teaches people how to paint fast and use broad strokes and big brushes to create these things, there's still some beautiful work there. And for the amateur artist, it is a wonderful thing to get into. So I do suggest that if you are looking into art, that maybe you look into some of the Bob Ross techniques. Wet-on-wet painting makes it a lot easier to deal with oils as far as blending and stuff like that. And I might try to remember to put that in the resources page in the show notes if I get a chance to. I've been so busy, I haven't had a chance to get all of that resource page and a lot of the pages on the website that I need to get done. I haven't had a chance to get them built like I wanted to, and I have been kind of poor on the show notes as well. Although I don't plan on show notes being very huge of a part of this podcast, because this is just more my thoughts and not really as many resources. So I'm going to have a resources page that you can go to. If you hear something you want, you can go to it and find that resource, and it'll make it easy for you. But anyway, I got off on a rabbit trail. I started talking about Bob Ross because Twitch had that going non-stop. They would stop, one episode would end and another one would begin. And I started showing it, well, I started watching it myself one night, and Kayla, my wife, brought our daughter in to put her down, and she said, I'm going to put her down here and see if you can get her calmed down, ready for sleep. And she started watching that, and she went nuts. She loved Bob Ross. She just kept commenting on, he's painting a mountain. He's painting a tree. Oh, look, he's painting a water. He's painting a wave. He's painting the ocean. She loved it, every little aspect of it. She just was enthralled. It was like she was hypnotized. And I realized it was great for what we're trying to do, getting her down, because Bob Ross spoke so gently. He was so... He moved slowly and gently and calmly. And the reason he did that was because it's very scary to paint on canvas. And he was trying, if you're not used to it. And he was trying to get people at ease and get people comfortable making those strokes. So he used that technique of delivery, very slow, very whisper, kind of oriented with his voice, and just very calming. And I said, this is great. She loves this, and it's calming her down, and it's getting her sleepy. And sure enough, as long as that was playing, we used that. And then they got to the last episode and ended it. And now I'm bummed because I don't have that anymore. And she still asks for it. But I just noticed that she loves artwork. She loves things that are creative. And that makes me so happy, because I'm not going to be the kind of guy who's going to try to force my children to go into the family business at all. I do intend to teach them both entrepreneurship. Wow, that is such a hard word to say, especially when you do like I do, and forgot to bring something to keep my voice wet. I don't have anything to drink. Let's try that again. I'm going to teach them both entrepreneurship, and because I would like them to have the option, if they do grow up to have the type of personality where they could be their own boss or would want to run their own company, then I want them to have the skill set to do that. So I'm going to teach it to them, but I'm certainly not going to insist that they do or go into the family business. But the fact that one or both of them do show some potential in art, and then my daughter is showing a real interest in it, that excites me. And I know that she's just 2.5. I know she's going to get interested in a whole lot of other stuff. But art is always going to be there for her. She's always going to see a work in progress on my art table. She's always going to see me doing it and watch me and want to sit there and draw with me and stuff. And whenever she wants me to draw with her, I always make sure to stop what I'm doing and sit down and draw with her. I want her to have those experiences and those memories that say, wow, this was something that just makes me happy. This is something I'll remember from my dad that just makes me happy. And so hopefully, we'll see, but hopefully that's exactly what's going to happen with my daughter, and maybe she'll be an artist just like her dad. Now, I mentioned in episode number 8 that I was cutting back on a lot of stuff, and that I had made some tough decisions, that I was going to stop writing on my book that I'm very far into. I've got a musical that I'm trying to make the orchestral arrangements happen for, that I'm putting on the shelf. And I tried to make the point that I really need to do this one thing at a time, to set goals and to put something in place that will allow me to make an income for my family while working for myself, because that's what I hope to always do as I do now. But once my hand becomes to a point where it can't etch anymore, that's just a lot of strain on a person's body and my hand, that eventually it's going to not want to etch anymore, and I'm going to need something in place to allow me to continue an income when I have to give up etching. And I talked about that, and I talked about that I had to make some tough decisions so that I could get some of the groundwork in place before I started doing that. And that included putting some things on the shelf and not doing some things that I really enjoy doing, because my life, being a creative type person, and if you're a creative type person, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. My life can be a whirlwind. So many ideas, everything's new. When I see a new canvas, I just have so many great ideas, and it's hard to finish one project because I want to jump to the next one when I get a new idea. And you have to learn to prioritize, and that's a whole other episode as well. I did an episode based on that when I had the podcast, when I had the Everything Arts podcast. But I think that it's important enough that I may do an entire episode on that here on Road Noise, just so that you listeners can get that content, because I think it's really important and really instructive for those people who are the creative types and have a hard time sticking to one thing because you see the shiny new object over there in the corner of your eye. Well, that happens to me all the time. And in the last episode, I discussed that and how it was a tough decision to make, but I was putting some stuff on the shelf. And then immediately within the next week, I had a couple of new ideas that I seriously let roll around in my head for a while. So instead of putting the stuff on the shelf that I was kind of bummed about having to put on the shelf, and then getting to the business of being focused, I put those things on the shelf and then tried to add a couple of new things. Now, they were both extensions of what I'm already doing to brand myself. And so that's, I think at first when I started talking about doing that, or thinking about doing that, I think at first it was just because I was thinking about increasing the branding or turning up the volume on the branding of my brand. And here's what I started. During the week, last week, or towards the end of the week, I started thinking, I'm really enjoying these blog posts that I'm doing. I have a very small amount of people who are reading them right now, but I just started. And all indications say that for a blog to be successful, most of the time it takes at least a year, maybe even 2, before you start seeing some real traction on your blog and readership. And so I'm aware of that, but at the same time, I'll release something. Right now, I try to release on Monday and Thursday. I do 2 blog posts a week. That's a lot of writing. But I noticed that when I get ahead in the blogs, like I need to do, I get so anxious to go ahead and release one that it's everything I can do not to release it on a Sunday night instead of Monday morning, or Wednesday night instead of Thursday morning. And it's a discipline that you just have to make yourself do. So I started thinking, well, what if I added one more weekly post? That's an entirely extra article that I would be intended to write. And not only that, I do the artwork for them. I go and find the pictures and get everything on Photoshop and put the text and everything on there myself. I don't have a virtual assistant to do that for me. So that's a lot of extra work adding one more post a week. Most people don't continue a blog when they try to post once a week. Most people don't finish their blog. People who start them end up abandoning them when they're trying to post one a month. It's just consistency is so hard. And so far, I've been really good about getting 2 a week out for the last 2 or 3 weeks. And here I am finding myself wanting to add another to it because I'm just so ambitious and I'm so excited to release them. Another thing that I really started thinking about, and I didn't think about it very long. I shut it down fairly quickly because of the cost and the time. As I was in church Sunday morning, the pastor was on fire. I was really feeling the Lord work in my heart. And I have had in mind a podcast solely developed for helping people with addiction to pornography. You've heard me speak about it. I spoke very shortly on it and just mentioned it in passing in the last episode. And I mentioned that I do intend to have an entire episode of Road Noise dedicated to that. And I do, but I think I'm going to wait till after Christmas for that one. But I have had this yearning to help people. I really like to help people. And I know how devastating addiction to pornography can be for someone who feels that it is harmful to them. And I am that guy. I've been that guy, and I've had 20 years of experience dealing with it, and I've finally come to grips with it, and I have some tools that I feel like I can share to help people with that. And I want to start a podcast based just on that, so that there's nothing else. I can just reach as many people as possible and help as many people as possible. And I was having that ooey gooey feeling at church, and I don't feel like it was false. I just feel like it was just that need for me to help people really rising up in my spirit. And I started thinking, I need to go ahead and start that podcast. Well, I don't yet. And there's two big reasons for it. First of all, I have a hard enough time getting this podcast once a week recorded and edited and presentable enough. I mean, if you ask someone who is an audiophile or a audio snob to listen to this podcast, I may, because of what's going on, the noise of the road, everybody knows I'm driving, so I'm hoping you can forgive that. But there are a lot of people who probably won't be able to listen to this podcast because they won't be able to get past the bad audio quality of the noise under the road. I think as far as most people, they're okay with it because they understand what's going on, and it kind of makes you feel like you're in the car next to me. But that's not going to be for everybody, and I have a hard enough time getting the audio and tweaking it enough to where I think it's presentable enough for as many people as possible, and get it, this kind of content recorded on a weekly basis, because I want to release this on a week. I've already started releasing them a couple of days late. The last two were released a couple of days later than they were supposed to. I like to release these on Fridays. So hopefully, and this is a Wednesday, I'm hoping I'll have this ready to go and ready to release this coming Friday. But I've got that, and then I've got C1G, which is Q1 Go the Theater Show. That's my podcast that I've been doing for almost a year with Tony King, all about theater, and we release it every other week, or we try to, and have gotten a little bit behind on that because it's just time. It's hard to do. It's hard to get all of this stuff done. So that's number one reason I don't need to add to it. I'm ambitious. I want to, but I can't right now because I'm having a hard enough time. I need to get my workflow a little better arranged for what I've got going on right now. Secondly, it costs money. Podcast hosting can be expensive depending on what you're doing. Now, if I did do a pornography-themed self-help podcast, it would probably be once a month, maybe twice a month, but probably once a month. And I think I could probably get away doing that with the lowest podcast hosting that they offer. But I'm not so sure about that. I don't know if I would be able to do that. It's still going to get expensive. And I really don't have the disposable income right now to be able to do another podcast. So it comes down to time it would take to give you something quality, and it comes down to the money it would take in order to have the proper hosting for the podcast. So those are two things that I thought about doing this week, and adding to my workflow that is already quite heavy. And I got excited for a couple of days and started thinking about all the ways we could make this happen and all the possibilities and the growth and branding that could cause, because the more I'm out there, the more my brand is going to grow. But I had to step back because realistically, I don't need another podcast right now. I don't need to write another blog post right now. If I get to the point where I've got 4,000, 5,000 readers a day, and I'm starting to make money off of my blog posts, and I've got Amazon affiliate money coming in and stuff, and I can quit my day job and I can just blog and podcast for a living, I'll do that. I don't expect that to really be the case, but until that time, I've got to rein it in. I've got to put a cap on things, and I've got to remember what I said last week, that I've got a certain goal in mind. I need to put some stuff in place so that when I'm forced to stop etching for a living, I've got something that I can land on my feet and continue having an income. And so I'm not going to start the Help for Pornography Addiction podcast. I'm not going to start that yet. I am going to start one. I do know that there will come a time where I'm going to do it, but it's just not something that I'm prepared for right now. I could probably squeeze in the time and make that happen, but at the same time, I think what I'm trying to wait on is till I've got a place where I can go in, stand at the mic or sit at the mic, hit the record button and go, where everything's already set up and standard and ready to go. Because the problem is with Q1 Go, the theater show, every time we do one, I have to bring all of my equipment and set it up in a place wherever we're going to be. Most of the time it's one of the rooms of the Arts Center in Elberton. When I'm doing the Road Noise podcast, I have to set this system up in the seat beside me as I'm driving. And I have to set all that up, and I have to take the time to stop and do all that before I start driving, and it just gets to be a lot of time and trouble. So I want to make sure before I start anything else that I've got a good stationary setup where I can go in, I can prepare, can sit down, hit record, hit stop, and then start doing my editing, and it just makes the workflow so much better and so much easier. So I think that's how we're going to handle things on the podcast side. And again, as far as the blog goes, if I start getting a lot of readership and they're begging for more, then I'll add one more. But until then, I'm going to just have to make myself release them on Mondays and Thursdays only. But I've reined it in. I was successful. I was able to tell myself, Michael, don't be an idiot. Be ambitious, but be cautious. Be careful in your ambition. And that was what I kind of titled this section of this episode, because I know there are a lot of people out there like me who are like that. So that's just my word of advice. Yes, please be ambitious. You're going nowhere unless you have ambition. So be ambitious, but be cautious and be careful. And make sure that you think through everything that you're doing and every aspect of what you're wanting to do before you start. Because once you've started, you can have two things happen. You can be successful and plug along, or you can fall on your face. And then it's just another thing that you didn't complete. Don't do that. Be prepared. Prepare yourself to complete your projects by thinking them through all the way. Be ambitious, but be careful. And then the last thing I want to talk about in this episode is the fact that I realized that Santa Claus taught me how to broadcast. How's that, Michael? How did Santa Claus teach you how to broadcast? It's simple. His name is Charlie. He taught radio and television broadcasting at the school that I went to in South Carolina. When I got out of high school, I decided I was going into radio and television broadcasting because I wanted something that was in the entertainment field. And that was the closest I could find around here. I didn't realize that they had theater programs that you could go into. And I was lazy. I didn't search enough. I didn't really look. And my grades weren't good enough, I don't think, that I could have gotten into anywhere. I never even took the SAT, so I wouldn't have gotten into any major theater program. I was very poor at planning my future when I was in high school. There's another word to the wise. When you're in high school, if you're listening to this, or you've got a kid coming up, make sure the planning is there. They will regret it later if they don't. But I ended up going to radio and television broadcasting. I got a job in radio right out of my freshman, I want to say it was my first or second semester as a freshman. I got a job running a full-time nightly radio program. I just had a knack for it, and Charlie was the teacher. You want to talk about the perfect radio voice, and it wasn't put on. This man has a voice that was built to be in front of a microphone. It's just built for everything. You just love to hear him talk, and when you would come in, you would hear, "All right, everybody, get in your seats." And I'm not doing any justice. I mean, my voice sounds nothing like his, but he just commanded a room. Well, it was over 20 years ago that I did radio and television broadcasting, and after I got out, I never really saw Charlie anymore until he popped up on Facebook the other day. Well, I say the other day, it's been about a year since I've been friends with him, I think, on Facebook, but I really hadn't scoped him out and checked out his profile. But I started looking at it the other day, and I really started looking into what he is into now, because there's lots of pictures on his profile. He always had white hair and rosy cheeks, and I think blue eyes, and a white mustache and beard, but he kept it cropped short. He was, he was teaching in a college. But now he's let it grow to be Santa Claus. This man is Santa Claus, as far as I'm concerned. he is, I don't know how else to put it. He's the most beautiful Santa Claus I've ever seen. And he's real. Everything about him is real. And when you look at the photographs with the kids, with him holding them and talking to them, and he's got some professional photographers that do the work for him, and it's just absolutely beautiful. I checked with him yesterday, and I said, how much is a sitting package? Because my 2.5-year-old girl is enthralled with Santa Claus. She loves him, and she's so excited about the upcoming Christmas season. I don't want to take her to some dude who is just sitting there to get paid, and he's wearing some cotton beard that doesn't look real you could pull off. Charlie gets into it. Charlie, you can tell by looking at him, he loves what he does. And when he posts on his Facebook page, he's just posting about being Santa Claus. He loves the children, and he loves what he does. And there's a twinkle in his eye. I mean, you can almost believe this man is Santa Claus. And that was so cool to say, Santa taught me broadcasting. Santa got me my first radio job. It's really cool. I got excited about it. I'm like a little kid, and I can't wait. I found out where we can take her to have a photo shoot with him. He's going to be at a certain place in Anderson, South Carolina, and he said, I'm going to be here at this time. If you want to come, just bring your own camera, that's fine. And I can't wait. I can't wait to bring Merida to meet Santa Claus and to know that he was the one who was responsible for getting me a radio gig in the first place. And I can't wait to hear his voice again. It's so rich and powerful, and I want to get him on. I guess I'll never get him on this show because I'm driving. I'm driving while I'm doing the podcast, and I can't be having a whole lot of interviews or anything like that. So I really don't think that would be necessarily a good. I don't think this would necessarily be a good show to have him on. I was thinking in the very recent past about starting back up the Everything Arts podcast, and I would have interviewed him there if he would let me, because he also taught photography in that class, and he was a very good photographer, very good radio personality type, and I think he would have been an interesting interview for the Everything Arts podcast. But again, there's another podcast that I just don't have time to get involved with right this second. So, but if I do, he may be one of the first people I contact about talking to for an interview. So, this was a relatively quick episode, a relatively short one compared to what I normally do. But I'm almost at my mom's house, and I really need to get something to drink because my voice is dry. And I keep having to, you won't have heard them when you listen to this podcast because I will have edited them all out, but I keep having to clear my throat and wet my lips and stuff like that, things that you don't want to hear, so I'm going to pull them out of the podcast, edit them out, clip them. And so it's time for me to go. It's time to get this bad boy ready for editing and post-production and get it out to you, hopefully on Friday. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I hope you tell your friends about this podcast. Tell them that there's a guy out there who just drives around and talks about his life and talks about what I hope is halfway decently interesting to you. And if you're lonely, you can just have a few minutes to sit on another road trip with him. And here's how you can get in touch with me if you'd like to do that. First of all, obviously, in today's age, you got to have a website, and I do. It's www.roadnoisepodcast.com. Parts of it are still under construction, but the main part where you can stream the audio for these podcasts and stuff like that is up, and the podcast archives are there, so you can listen to every episode right there from the website. Again, www.roadnoisepodcast.com. You can go there and continue to go there as I get the website up and running to capacity and get everything built on the other pages. I also have an email address. You can email me at roadnoisepodcast@gmail.com. That's roadnoisepodcast@gmail.com. You can get in touch with me that way. And I also have a hotline. If you'd like to leave me a voicemail, I would absolutely love that. I like to hear what you sound like. I like to hear from you. It makes it more personal. And you can do that by calling 706-389-0401. That's 706-389-0401. We have a Facebook page. The Facebook page is facebook.com/roadnoisepodcast. And I also am on Twitter at Everything Arts. So go follow me on Twitter at Everything Arts. And if you want to read the blog that I talked about, real quick, I can tell you that is michaelblackston.wordpress.com. michaelblackston.wordpress.com. Go there and check out the blog. So until next time, I am Michael Blackston. Thanks for riding along with me in the passenger seat as we take another road trip and learn to live life 1 mile at a time.